Well, I started the photography about 5 years ago, kind of accidentally. I took these photos, and it was just a way of showing how small a baby death adder is. That's a newborn, it might be a week or two old. I didn't realize at the time when I took the photo, all I wanted to show was how small the snake was, but when I showed people the photo, everybody was really interested in this sort of interplay between a toy and an animal. It's very important for me to point out, I'm like a gateway science. It's the kind of thing that you try at a party because your friends pressure you into it, and if you like it, maybe in your own time you'll get hooked. So yeah, I'm a nerd interpreter, but I'm not a scientist. So I am a tour guide in Far North Queensland. I do Daintree tours, I do reef tours, I do marine science education with college groups, but I'm delivering that information to people who aren't focused in those fields, and it's really easy for me to sort of provide a whole bunch of really cool perspective. But what I did find really challenging throughout the years as a tour guide is that people don't care about the little things. On the reef, people want to see the big stuff. Everybody's fascinated by the idea of seeing a turtle. Nobody's fascinated by a cleaner wrasse, but a cleaner wrasse is an infinitely more interesting animal than a turtle. And trying to get people to refocus was always challenging. And then after I took the death adder photo, I was like, I've got a way to get people to look at this stuff, which is cool. I've been a gardener for 10 years as well here in Far North Queensland because tourism does not pay the bills. So gardening works. But what I did find, and this is years before I started photographing animals, was in a garden, you find so many incredible things, and gardeners don't care, they're just bugs, ooh, another spider, and the homeowners don't care because they have no idea, but in the wet tropics you can find some of the really rare endemics in people's gardens. And because they're in gardens and people don't want them, I found that as an opportunity to start photographing things that were being displaced. Right, so I have had a very fortunate circumstance of being able to find a lot of really rare wildlife through the course of operating on freehold land where World Heritage protections don't sort of come into play and stuff, and had a whole bunch of really cool opportunities to photograph stuff. So I photographed everything I can get near Lego, basically. Like I say, I'm not just bugs. I photograph boring things, common things. Nothing is below me, basically. Which is great, the really easy stuff to find is always good. But then I have managed to photograph some stuff most people don't even get to see or realise exists. Going out and doing coral spawning the other night and being able to photograph coral spawning in action with Lego is pretty awesome. And then I've also used this as a way to sort of, because it's all about scale, photograph things that are so small, even I couldn't see them properly when I was photographing them. But my gear's quite rudimentary, but it's a chance to show people things they can't physically see. And then every now and then I'll go and photograph things that are just too big to fit on a Lego diorama, if I can find a way to orchestrate that sort of garbage. So yeah, as an environmental educator, I am not just an invertebrate educator, but I am moving into lots of things. And then one of the things that I have found is obviously I aspire to take single shot photos. So getting lighting right, getting everything to work together and taking a photo that requires no post-production is challenging sometimes. And then working with live animals, because everything that I photograph is live, is quite difficult as well. And it's become a creative challenge for me to find a way to photograph things that don't want to sit still, aren't used to being photographed, and finding ways just to sort of make that work. And then I was photographing these things for about 2.5 years before I started getting on social media, but I now have all of the social stuff. And it's all little snippets of environmental education. Obviously, we've talked a lot about changing public perception, and it's not just invertebrates, but I work, with various members of the public, and I'm trying to change public perception about dangerous animals and, all sorts of stuff. So it became this holistic sort of a field. I made a bunch of merchandise, which you're all now familiar with. I did do a TEDx talk, which has been viewed almost 50,000 times around the world so far. That's cool. And then I go into classrooms, community groups, all that sort of stuff. And then let me explain that the show that I just toured, I wrote and produced a 90-minute thing and did 22 shows across 4 states of Australia. And I am now probably going to roll that show out again next year and do a few more shows of it. So at least Darwin in August next year. So it's like I say, science light. Gateway science. And one of the things with what I do then is by taking these photographs, I'm photographing things that people who aren't passionate about them can become passionate about. Admittedly, I find documentaries really boring. I find animals and wildlife really interesting, but I can't watch a documentary at home. I don't know if you guys have noticed this over the last few days, but I don't sit still very well. And yeah, putting on like videos of animals is just interminably boring for me. So I guess I'm targeting myself, someone who wants something short and quirky and weird and different and interesting. You know, the animal itself is fascinating, but it needs to be captured in an environment that I can then engage with. But it has given me the ability to talk to people who don't like these things about them. I do tend to make the animals out to be bad guys sometimes. And that I feel bad about that actually. After yesterday's talk about ethics and stuff, there's a few things that concern me with my own work. I don't want to demonize anything, but at the same time, artistically, firstly, how many stories can you tell with toys? And secondly, the toy manufacturer chooses to make happy faces and scared faces, and there isn't a lot of emotion you can put in the middle there. So they're either oblivious to the animal or they're scared deeply of the animal. So to try and mediate that in an image. One of the problems that I do struggle with though is that it makes it look like anyone could just go and handle these things. And I don't actually want to promote that. My photography is deeply respectful of the subject. My process is a nightmare sometimes. You know, you're trying to get an animal that doesn't want to sit in a place to engage with that place in a way that's going to look really natural once you've captured it is very difficult. And the last thing I want to do is encourage kids to throw animals at their toys for fun. So I'm kind of working against myself as I try and change public perception, but not so much that everyone wants to grab things, which is hard. And then within the ethics side of it as well is that personally, I worry that people will think that I'm mistreating these animals or manipulating these animals, but it really is a simple matter of just putting them on Lego and hoping they stay long enough I can photograph them. I don't glue them down, pin them down, hold them in any one place. They're all free to leave at any point, which is why I do it in the bathtub. Yeah, it's become kind of a weird, tricky obsession. But I am very proud to say that it has proven an opportunity to cross boundaries. The Let Me Explain show specifically, you know, going out into theatres and providing this as a school holiday entertainment thing, I had a chance to talk to audiences of people who would never show up for Invertebrates Australia if Invertebrates Australia called out for them, or never watched one of Alan's documentaries. I had these people come and sit, and I talked about everything. I talked about Christmas beetles and citizen science and biodiversity loss and deforestation and, you know, the facade of this happy, friendly bug world on Lego. It's more about inviting people into a world of wonder than it is about trying to recruit them for anything, I guess. And one of the things that Lego's really good for is that it's an artistic thing. You know, there is a world there, and there's mystery, and there's wonder, and there's colour, and there's all of this sort of caricature-like stuff that you don't necessarily have to walk away from that with anything more than, oh, that's a cute picture. But it does become a really good way to get people intrigued by what you're sharing. And I found that in the rainforest as well. My rainforest tour isn't like, you have to like this, you have to like this. It's more of a, this is why I like it, you can take or leave that, but most people align with that a lot easier. I then just sort of offset that with a whole bunch of really close to home science. It is possible, thankfully, within this medium then to talk to people, not just about simple superficial features, things like camouflage, obviously, or mimicry for defense, or mimicry for hunting behavior, you know, like our little green ant mimic spider there, but to also then go and talk with school groups, community groups, and the wider public about adaptations for survival, like Molochlorotus there is mind-blowingly cool, but also things like, you know, your water striders and that hydrophobic balance that they have on water, stuff like that, thermoconforming behaviour and all of that sort of stuff with our boidies, but then go even deeper. Because one of the things that I do find really rewarding about this is the images themselves. It's an artistically composed image of a live animal. You get a close view at the animal, but it's not going to run away, but you also don't get to handle it. So there's no distraction beyond the initial moment in a classroom. The kids will go, "What is a spider?" And then they sit there and let me talk about it. So I have had the chance to drill deeper into things like endosymbiosis, you know, with the microbial communities that allow the digestion of timber, stuff like that, symbiosis, like Alan's doing with green ants and butterflies and stuff, and be able to talk about these really complex interwoven relationships, go right into things like biocycling and the importance of invertebrates in the environment, which is something that I hammered pretty hard with the Let Me Explain show. My missus during the scripting process was like, you don't need 15 minutes about cockroaches. It's like, do! And we did it, and nobody got to complain for the rest of the show. Because it is, you know, people hate cockroaches, but they're imperative to everything, which is really big. And then also go into human relationships with wildlife, whether that's for research purposes in a nice way or research purposes in a questionably ethical or unethical way. Go into things like our relationship and how we distort the biome, how those reflections come back to us, and then how we handle those. You know, we do have this huge influence over nature, and things like pollinators is something that need to be discussed more often. And yeah, that's my big one. That I've hammered this at every single talk I've ever done. I paid $20 for that single piece of plastic, right? Lego have only ever made one gavel for one judge in all the years they've been making. So I had to buy the gavel so that Santa could take an imposter to court for fraud. Because in Far North Queensland, everybody sees these green beetles and goes, there's Christmas beetles everywhere. Like, no, you've wiped them out. They're not here anymore, because the green Christmas beetle we have is really quite hard to find down in the wet tropics where I am at the verge of the Daintree. So yeah, every single presentation has cockroaches and Christmas beetles in it. And yeah, it just gives me a chance to talk about all these different things. Food production, stuff like that, you know. I have gone into, very proud to say, I went into a Year 10 agriculture class and spent an hour talking about bugs for food and bugs in food production. I just recently went into a Year 11 biology class and talked about the importance of invertebrates, because they were about to go out and do field surveys and stuff. And it did actually impact the students' engagement with the surveys. But my proudest thing out of both of those two senior high school things was that the teachers were the ones who came up after the kids had left and went, is that true? I didn't know half of that stuff. Really, is that true? And I'm a non-scientist sharing science with scientists. That's a pretty, right? Not you guys, you scared the hell out of me, but everyone else is cool. So yeah, it's a very versatile method, but one of the problems that I have with this right now is it's a one-of-a-kind thing. There's nothing like it. And so I don't know how to sell it. I don't know how to market it. And most people aren't willing to engage with it. You know, the tour sold quite badly, considering all things. You know, I did speak to 6 people in a 500-seat theatre because that was all that showed up at one point, you know. So a lot of people look at this thing and go, well, I don't like bugs and I don't like Lego. Why the hell would I care? And that, I'm struggling with that. But more than that, I'm struggling now with sourcing subjects and validating what I'm representing. Although I am not a scientist, I want to represent science accurately. And what I need going forward is the ability to engage with scientists, researchers, breeders and keepers, photograph subjects that are important and are of significance, and then use the science that I've learned from those people and the photographs that I've taken with those people to educate the broader public. And I'm running up to a wall there. I have had some rather notable assistance from Alan, from Reese, a few other people. Invertebrates Australia has been great, but I am struggling to get out there further. Because now it's like I want to target species that are relevant, education-wise, relevant societally. And when I contact scientists, most of the time I just don't get an answer. You know, some idiot with Lego, I want to come and play with your bugs. It doesn't pan out for me, and that I'm struggling with. So I don't know, but things like this, you know, I can be an ally, I can be an asset, I can be an advocate, and I can share these stories in arenas that you might not be able to position yourself. So I'd definitely be keen, if any of you have anything you want to have, you know, diffused through this medium and shared with the public, I'm going to keep, you know, pushing it out there. It's just about getting people aware that nature's important, getting people more mindful about this stuff and connecting them more with actual relevant science. You know, I go into classrooms and show them the daddy longlegs spider, and every kid, that's the most venomous spider in the world, shut up. You know, that kind of stuff, just trying to fight public misconceptions and improve understanding in a way that's accessible, generally free and digestible, and people will actually sort of engage with. So that's it, that's the Lego thing. Are there questions?